I'm Ellie.
I'm Ben.
And we are the husband and wife team behind the Posture Squad, which is our online monthly membership platform. And this is our 2-hour introduction to posture webinar. So we are going to give you a little bit of a whistle-stop tour on all things posture, what we mean by posture, what we mean by posture therapy. We're going to run through some practical function tests, which will make sense in a bit. And then we're going to leave plenty of time at the end for any questions that might come in. So yeah, just to give us a little, give you guys a little bit of an overview of who we are. My name is Ellie, like I said, and I've been doing this now for about 7 years. So I am a posture therapist trained in the Egoscue Method. And alongside that, I'm also a yoga teacher and I'm a breathwork instructor trained in the Egoscue Method. And then I'll hand over
Don't need the mic.
to Ben.
So yeah, I'm Ben. I have also trained in the Egoscue Method. I found posture through Ellie and then trained coming up to 4 years ago now. And subsequently, I've also become a mobility coach. So I'm trained in functional range conditioning. And so I use that alongside my posture qualification to help people improve their mobility as well as improve their posture. But I won't go too much into that just yet because we're going to get more into what posture is as we go through.
Yeah. Sorry, we've only got one working microphone at the moment, so we're swapping between the two of us. So in today's session, what we're going to do is run you through about 10 to 15 minutes of posture theory. So us talking at you, sorry. But it does help to have a little bit of context before we then start doing some practical stuff. You will get sent the recording afterwards, so you can repeat this as many times as you like. And as I said, we've got that workbook, which we've made to kind of help accompany you to get the most out of the seminar today. In terms of equipment, all you're going to need for the exercise part of the class, but it's not intense exercise or anything like that, is just a hard back chair like the one that we have behind us. So something like that that you can sit on where you're not going to be wobbling around all over the place. So we don't want a sofa because your pelvis won't be level when we do the exercise that we're going to do. So yeah, we'll kick into it. We've got 10 minutes of theory-ish, and then we're going to do probably about 45 minutes to an hour of function tests, and then we're going to leave plenty of time for questions. It might be that we don't take up the whole 2-hour period. So we've just left loads of time just in case there were lots of questions that came in. And our advice to you would be, because there are only a few of you on the call today, try and take as many notes as you can during the practical bit, because we will be able to really help you on quite a bespoke level, because there are only a few of you. But, you know, obviously you don't have to talk on the camera or anything if you don't want. So what is posture? And posture is quite a difficult thing to explain to people for the first time, because ironically, posture is not what most people think it is. So posture is not about shoving your shoulders back and lifting your chest up to the ceiling. It's not about standing rigidly like a soldier or anything like that. Everything that you think you probably know about posture, or that your teachers told you about posture, or your parents told you about posture, is actually the antithesis of what we mean by posture as posture therapists. So there's this notion that posture is a stiff way that you hold yourself still. But in reality, posture is actually your movement patterns. It's all about your body's ability to move. And it's basically it's a reflection of the state of your musculoskeletal system. So, you know, people think posture is, they say I have bad posture because my head is forwards and my back is forwards, or my knees are bent, or whatever it might be. And those are visual clues as to what is not happening in the muscles. So your posture is constantly in flux. You take it into every single movement and position that you ever do in your life. Everything is a posture. Everything requires a posture. And I always like to say that we can have a macro posture, which is what our body is doing when you kind of zoom out of it. But within that macro posture, you have a million different micro postures. So the example that I like to use is when you're sat at your desk, your macro posture is that you're sat at the desk. But your micro postures might be that your hips are internally rotated with your knees touching, but you could have your knees externally rotated and kind of spread apart from one another. You could have your back rounded forwards into flexion, or you could have your back upright into extension. So posture is so much more than just holding yourself rigidly and shoving your shoulders back. Your posture is your body's ability to move. And we have all of these muscles in our body, over 300 muscles in our body, which all have to kind of interact together and work together in a specific way to keep your body moving efficiently. We have a blueprint that evolution has designed us to have. So if we were living this hunter-gatherer lifestyle that our body has evolved for, it would keep us active most of the time in a whole variety of different ways. And that type of lifestyle keeps our muscles operating in the way that we want them to. But unfortunately, you know, as I'm sure many of you will know, we have all lived a very sedentary lifestyle, relatively speaking, to the one that we have evolved for. And because of that, the muscles start to switch off in certain places and other muscles start to take over. And this weakness in certain muscles and overwork in other muscles basically pulls the joints out of the position that they should be in. And when the joints are pulled out of position, over time, it leads to wear and tear in the joints, and it leads to strain in the muscles. But beyond that, it also leads to problems with your breathing. You know, if your rib cage position is compromised, you're going to have issues breathing. It can lead to problems with blood circulation. So if your ankles aren't working properly, you might notice you get things like varicose veins in your lower legs. It's going to lead to issues, neurological issues. So if you get kind of cold hands, cold feet, oftentimes it's due to impingement around the neck and impingement around the hips, because the brachial plexus and the plexus through the hips kind of run down into the feet. So your posture is actually so much more than just musculoskeletal pain, although that's what most people are kind of drawn here for. It's everything. Your posture is the home that you live in. It's the home that all of your organs live in. And therefore, we want to try and work towards the best posture that we can have through improving our movement patterns and restoring them back to where they kind of came from, so that all of us can live as harmoniously as we can. You know, this is not just about reducing pain. It is about becoming the best version of yourself without that anxiety and that worry that comes from pain, and without the lack of mental clarity that comes when, you know, when everything is aligned and you just feel strong and powerful. It's a feeling that I wish I could kind of bottle and spray on people like a perfume, because I know it would make me a billionaire if you could capture that feeling. And it just feels so good. So we're kind of here to show to you today and to teach you a bit more that your body might feel a certain way now, but it doesn't have to feel that way forever. Your posture is not bad because of your age. Your pain isn't getting worse because of your age. It's because these bad movement patterns stack over time, and that then leads to more degradation in the joints and just more stiffness over time. But these things can be reversed if we work on our posture through posture therapy. And I'll pass back over to Ben, because I can literally, as you can tell, talk about this for ages and ages.
So what I'm going to do is I'll talk to you about what posture therapy is. I'll try to keep it brief because both of us have a habit of rambling on. But in essence, what posture therapy is it's learning corrective exercises that help restore balance to your body. So like Ellie said, when we live a sedentary lifestyle where we're not moving in the way that our bodies were designed to, muscles of our body start to almost forget how they should function, which ultimately leads to the joints of our body being out of alignment. So effectively, we teach people exercises that help restore strength back to weak, dysfunctional muscles of the body, and ultimately help them to become more resilient, have a body that's capable of doing all the activities that they want to take themselves to do. So be that CrossFit if you want to go to that extreme, but it might just be as simple as getting on the floor to play with your grandkids, moving some furniture in the garden, and it not resulting in pain, tension, your body being wound up and just kind of breaking down over time. Pain doesn't have to become an inevitability as we age if we put the right function in. So some of what we're going to go through today will help to teach you some of those exercises that might help you to remove pain that's there, but also prevent pain. So think of posture therapy as an MOT for your body. We understand that an MOT isn't just for old bangers of cars, it is also for your supercars, your Lamborghinis, your Ferraris. So posture therapy is for everybody. It helps us to become balanced and therefore become resilient and have strong functional bodies. We like to think of it as somewhere between a physio and a yoga teacher. So we're not medical, but we do help people with pain. But what we do differs in, well, I would say quite substantially to other modalities. So instead of looking at the area of your body that hurts or the area of your body that has tension as being weak, we see that area as overworking. So a lot of other practices, a lot of other treatments will see a painful knee or a knee that is causing someone discomfort as weak. They will give you exercises to strengthen around that knee, or they might suggest that you have a knee replacement or whatever it might be. What we do differs because we see that area as overworking, as I said. So we want to look at where in your body is not doing its job correctly that's resulting in that knee overworking. So when we work with people, it's very rare that we will look or give exercises that focus on the area that they come to us with their pain or where their symptom is presenting. Instead, we'll look at elsewhere in the body as to what we need to get working properly. So which muscles need to wake up? What do we need to realign so that knee is not taking excessive burden? I like to think of it a bit like a suspension bridge. So you can picture a suspension bridge with all of its different supports coming down. If those supports slowly started breaking, the bridge would probably stay up for quite a while because they don't design them to be right at their limits. They build in a little bit of extra capacity there. But eventually, one of those supports is going to break and the bridge is going to come crumbling down. That support that broke wasn't weak. It was overworking because of all the ones that had broken before it. So that's just like our bodies. That knee is not weak, it is overworking because all of the other bits have broken down before that knee did. So we just like to see things a little bit differently to how other treatment methods do. And so this might have to challenge some of what you've believed for a long time about how you function. But when we start to target the right areas, change can happen quite quickly. And you might even notice today in some of the exercises that we do that you feel change in as little as 3 or 5 minutes. But in order to maintain that change, in order to keep our bodies functional over time, we have to keep putting these inputs in, which is why I say posture is for everybody. It's not just for people in pain. Neither of us are in pain, but we still do these exercises daily because we know that's what it takes in order for us to stay out of pain long term. I'll probably stop going there because otherwise, as I said, I could ramble on forever. And I'll just pass back to Ellie to talk about.
So just a little bit more talking and then we're going to get you guys moving. But yeah, so just to kind of like clarify on what Ben said as well, because it helps me lead into my point. When we're working with people, the area of the body that hurts, the symptom or the condition, doesn't actually tell us anything helpful about their movement patterns or the root causes of their pain. So someone can come to us and say, I have knee pain, I have shoulder pain, I have neck pain. And if I hear that, those are the 3 areas of the body that I know that I mustn't focus on. Because if we focus on those areas of the body, we're very likely to actually just make them overwork more and make them feel worse. So posture is this whole thing where you have to kind of take your mind away from the part of your body that hurts and you have to focus on everything else, because when you focus on everything else, the bit of your body that hurts will stop bearing that load. But saying that, your symptoms are helpful because they are your messenger. So this is what's really important before we get into the practical today. Your symptoms don't tell us helpful information about what your body needs to get better, but they do give us helpful information when we can tune into them feeling better or worse. So I have created the kind of posture 10 commandments, and commandment number 1 is pain is your guide, respect it. So we say that, you know, no pain, no gain is the most ridiculous phrase ever, because if we are moving through pain, ignoring pain, icing pain, taking baths, taking painkillers, you know, doing all of these things that we do to just soldier on and carry on, what we're actually doing is totally disrespecting our body. Pain is basically the only way that our body has to communicate with us that something is wrong. And in our society, we have labeled it as bad or problematic. And pain is not bad or problematic. Pain is a message. We must listen to it, because if we're not listening to it, we're never going to get better. And these kind of band-aid solutions allow you to carry on doing things that your body doesn't want you to do for longer. So posture commandment number 1 is pain is your guide, respect it. Anything that we do tonight that aggravates what you consider to be a normal symptom of your pain, you've got to stop doing. Because, you know, this is something that if you get into posture, if you do this more frequently, you'll learn this lesson over and over again. And probably the 17th time it happens, it will then click of your hip is shouting at you. You've got to stop doing the exercise that's making your hip shout at you. You carrying on isn't going to change anything. The hip's just going to fight you. Your body is wiser than your ego is. So listen to the body. Don't let the ego take over. And when we can start doing that, it means that we will start making progress, because we're showing self-compassion. We're listening to the wisdom of our body, and it means that we can actually start talking to it. So if we ignore pain and fight through it, we never make change. Whereas if we are able to lean into positive changes and negative changes and read them as a message, it allows us to carve this path for ourselves where we carry on doing the things that work for our body, and we pull back from the things temporarily that don't suit our body. So we have to do some homework beforehand before we can maybe go back to lifting heavy at the gym or running marathons, or even something simple. You know, it may just be that you want to have a standing desk at work and your back hurts loads when you have your standing desk. So, you know, you sit at your desk as much as you need, do the posture homework, and then one day you can stand at your standing desk, no problem. So everybody's goal, kind of like Ben said, is very different. It's very relative depending on the individual person. But what we know is that everybody needs this. It's just that not everybody knows about it yet. So that being said, convoluted way, anything today that aggravates your normal symptoms of pain, which we're going to write down to start with, we do not want you continuing with. But saying that, expect weird stuff to happen. So we want it to be that you feel discomfort in new places. You might start cramping a little bit in places. You might start wobbling in places. Anything which is a strange signal from your body but is not normal pain is most likely a really positive sign that you are changing your posture, you're changing how your muscles are firing. Wobbling is tension relieving itself from normally the hips. Cramping is often the feet. Burning is often the shoulders. These things are all signs of positive hard work, but they are different to, ouch, my normal knee pain feels worse, or ouch, my normal back pain feels worse. Yeah. So yeah, pain is your guide, respect it, but expect discomfort tonight.
So if you have downloaded the workbook, this would probably be quite a good time to fill out any symptoms, surgeries, things like that in that early part of the workbook. But if not, don't worry. Perhaps just take a second to write down particularly symptoms that you normally experience. So if you know you normally get lower back pain, or you normally get knee pain, or you often get migraines, or whatever it might be, I want you just to take a note of those symptoms now, because they're going to be useful as we go through. We are in a second going to get into sort of feeling into what our body feels like now, and some of those symptoms might be present, some of them might not, but it's often good just to have a note of these things at the outset, because then as we go through, not only are we going to know what changes from how our body feels at the beginning, but we might also notice that when we wake up tomorrow, our normal lower back pain that we have first thing in the morning doesn't quite feel as bad as it did previously. And then that's a good sign that we did something positive today that helped that normal symptom. So just take a second, write down your normal symptoms that you experience, perhaps even give them a score. So if you know that you have almost debilitating lower back pain, note that down. If you know every so often I get a little bit of tension on the underside of my right foot, maybe just give that a 1 or 2. Maybe if it's really bad, give it a 8, 9, 10, something like that. But just take a second, write those down. They're there then for you so that you have a little bit more detail when we get a bit further into it. We are going to do a standing assessment in a second. I will talk you through exactly how we're going to do that. And then we're going to get into some function tests. So what function tests are, it basically is a fancy word for an exercise that teaches us something about our body. Like we said, when we go through these exercises, you might notice things change. So you might notice by stretching your shoulders or your upper back that you have changes in your normal knee pain. So that's a function test teaching you something positive. So you might notice that when we do one of the exercises, one of your normal symptoms reduces. Like Ellie said, you might also notice during one of the exercises that one of your symptoms increases. Again, really good information, but you might also notice that it doesn't really do a lot. And so we've got 3 different, I guess, measures. We've got makes things worse, makes things better, and is kind of neutral. All of which are good information, but really the important one and the ones that we really want to focus on is the ones that make us feel better, because that's teaching us what we need to work on in our bodies in order to make those symptoms go away long term. Hopefully that's given you enough time to write down what your symptoms are, and then we're going to get into a standing assessment. Shall I talk you through the standing assessment?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So what I want you to do is just stand up for me. I want you to maybe stomp your feet a few times and shake your arms. Come and stand as normally and naturally as possible. It's actually quite handy doing this online with no cameras on, because when I do this in a corporate setting in front of a group of people, they often try and hold good posture at this point. I want you to stand naturally. Imagine you're waiting for the kettle to boil or waiting for a bus or something like that. And what we're going to do from here is feel into our bodies now. This can quite often be a difficult exercise when you first start this, so I don't want you to stress too much about this, but possibly what you might notice is you can feel one of your normal symptoms. So if you can feel that one of your normal symptoms, let's say lower back pain, is present, I want you to take a note of that and possibly even pop it into your notebook as well at this start point. I also want you to notice, is there anywhere that's maybe low level tension? So it's not necessarily a screaming symptom right now, but perhaps you notice that your glutes feel really tight, or that your shoulders feel a little bit tight and maybe rounded forward. Also really important information. So just note down any tension, any pain that you feel at this starting point. I also want you to take a note as to maybe where's working hard. Does it feel like your quads, so your upper thigh muscles, are working quite hard to keep you upright? Perhaps you notice that your upper back feels like it's locked on, or maybe you feel like you're gripping in your abs. I just want you to take a note of the areas of your body that feel like they're working quite hard as you're stood there. The final little bit, which is probably the most nuanced and difficult, is I want you to tune into imbalance within your body. So we're going to start at the feet for this, because I actually think that this is probably the easiest bit for people to get in this early stage. I want you to feel into where the weight is in your feet. Does it feel like you have more weight towards your toes, or perhaps maybe more weight towards your heels? Does it feel like you have equal weight in each foot, or does it maybe feel like there's more weight in one foot than the other? And then finally with the feet, I want you just to feel into, does it feel like there's more weight on the inside edge, so the big toe edge of your foot, or does it feel like there's more weight on the little toe edge of your foot? And this might change as we go through. So it is worth seeing if you can pick out those little bits of detail at the start here. I also want you to tune into any other imbalance. So you might have a real sense that your right shoulder is maybe ahead of your left one, or perhaps that it's a lot higher than your left one. And I'm using the right as an example here. It might be the other way around. And the same is true of your hips too. So you might notice that perhaps your one hip is much further forward in space than the other, or perhaps a lot higher than the other. And again, just see if you can notice those. Like I said, this can sometimes be a difficult exercise for people at the outset. A lot of the time when people come to us, they're quite disembodied. And part of our job is to train people into being able to feel into their bodies a little bit more, being able to understand these little nuances, the little subtleties that their bodies are showing them. But the more information that you can gather at this starting point, the more you're able to tune into how your body feels now. We're going to repeat this a bit as we go through, and then you're going to know what some of the changes or what's changed as a result of some of the exercises that we do. So yeah, make a note of those. Perhaps if you feel like there's a lot and it's overwhelming, make a note of the 3 top things that stand out for you. So first start with pain, then tension, perhaps what's working hard, and then imbalance from side to side. So those sort of take things in that order. Pain is going to be our main guide. Tension is also really useful. And then I always think of imbalance and where's working hard as kind of being lower down the pecking order, but also important if they are things that really stand out to you.
Yeah, cool. So Ben is going to model for me, and I might have to bring that up slightly so you can see his face. So we've just done the standing assessment, which is basically us taking stock of our starting point. And Ben, can you just move over that way? Thank you. We're just taking stock of our starting point. So now what we're going to do is we're going to test variables. And the way that I like to say this is we've got 6 of these tests, and we're going to pull at different threads in your body to see how your body responds. Like Ben said, you are going to respond well to some of them. You might respond badly to some of them, and you might just be indifferent to some of them. And your job is to pick the ones that make you feel good or better. You're not going to get 100% healed, but you're looking for these clues that we're pulling the right thread of your body. It gives you an idea of what part of your body you need to focus on more to reduce that compensatory pain elsewhere. So the first one that we're going to do is our standing pigeon-toed test. And it's very, very simple. All of these are very simple, but they may be surprisingly hard work. I want you, Ben, to just turn your feet into a pigeon-toed position. And if you guys could follow me as well, that would be great, and take Ben's lead there. So when you do your pigeon-toed position, I'll just set a timer so I don't keep you here for like 10 minutes. When you do a pigeon-toed position, you're not going so pigeon-toed that it's really, really difficult for you. So don't go crazy, crazy pigeon-toed, and don't go so pigeon-toed that you cause yourself any knee discomfort or anything like that. So you're just changing the angle of your feet to a pigeon-toe position. For any problems, any pain, reduce that angle. It still may do things to your feet and to the rest of your body. And what you're going to do is you're going to roll your knees, you're going to roll your big toes down to the floor. So you're going to kind of push on the inner edges of your feet. So people often ask me, do you mean collapse my arches? And yes, I mean collapse the arches of your feet. So squish them down. But at the same time, I want you to have a softness to your knees. So I don't want your knees to lock backwards into hyperextension, which often happens when our feet are not behaving properly. So you're just going to stand here and respecting the posture commandment. You know, if you do this and you notice immediately that your lower back pain gets worse, or your shoulder pain gets worse, whatever it might be, your knee pain gets worse, just stop the exercise. And that is you on that road to being a posture detective and respecting your body. But for everybody else, I'm just going to keep you here for a little bit longer, because these positions can sometimes take time for everything to start clicking into place. They're quite like a bit of a slow burner sometimes. So what we're doing here, merely by putting our feet inwards like this, we are challenging most people's normal foot position. So most people's normal foot position is out to the side. Their toes are wider than their ankles and their feet are stuck there. And so what we're doing is we're challenging the function of our feet to another position, which is going to hopefully wake up the muscles around the arches of the feet, the ankles, the calves, the shins. Do not be surprised. Do not be alarmed if you feel your lower legs working really hard. It's a really good sign. If you don't feel anything, soften your knees, because you're probably hyperextending them, and pin a little bit more into those big toe joints. So we're changing the rotation of the feet. And because the feet are connected to everything else in your body, what this also starts to do is it twists your femurs, your thigh bones, internally. And by doing that, it changes the hip position in the pelvis, and it can really start to create more pelvic balance. So you might start, after a little while of being here, not only feeling kind of hard work and hard work and cramps and things like that in the lower legs, you might then start feeling a little bit wobbly through your hips. And that is your hips starting to let go into extension. So like a lengthened position, the opposite of being on a chair. If you feel that happening, it's a great sign. You're stretching off your hips purely by changing your foot position. So you've been here now for about 3 minutes. And what I want you to tune in with whilst you're here is, how do your symptoms feel? So maybe you had lower back pain or neck pain or shoulder pain. And maybe the longer that you stand here for, you've got really burny feet, and maybe you're feeling your quads fire. Maybe you've got that hip wobble. Maybe you've got other stuff that's happening that's quite dramatic. But what's happening to the symptoms? I can't tell you what your symptoms are, but to use an example, what's your lower back pain doing? What's your shoulder pain doing? What's your neck pain doing? If any of your symptoms have reduced in severity by standing like this for 4 minutes, which is what we're at the moment, you know that the pain that you experience here is caused by foot dysfunction. So you can write this in your workbooks, you can write this on your phone or make a note of it. But if you are noticing a positive difference to whichever symptoms in your body that you might be noticing feel better, write that down, because that's a really useful nugget of information. My foot dysfunction is causing my X, whatever it might be. But some of you might not be feeling any improvements, and some of you might be actively feeling worse, which is your body saying, please don't go after my feet straight away. It's that simple. We need to pull another thread for you. That's all it is. So this is standing pigeon-toed. It's testing the function of your feet by putting them in a position that's alien to most people. And by doing so, we change the entire stacking of the rest of your body. Okay. I'm excited about doing this next one because it's the one that I need the most and I get really tired.
So I'm going to take you through the next function test, which is going to be our function test for our shoulders and our thoracic spine, which basically means our upper back. So I want you just to stand normally and naturally again. So take your feet at that pigeon-toed position if you haven't already. And what I'm going to get you to do from here is deeply interlace your fingers for me. So think about them being as interlocked as they possibly can, and take them behind the low part of your skull. So they're not on your neck, they're not on top of your head, they're behind the low part of your skull. I'll start the timer here. So straight away, you might notice that taking the hands behind your head like this is possibly difficult. Perhaps it was a big stretch across your shoulders. Something that you're going to learn if you get more into doing your posture therapy or posture exercises is that all of the exercises may look simple from the outset, but they're actually more complicated and they have a lot more cues than people necessarily realize. So what you may have noticed is as you took your hands behind your head like this, perhaps your shoulders rose up around your ears. And if that's the case, what I want you to do is try and draw those shoulders down for me, and even have a sense of squeezing your shoulder blades slightly backwards as well. As you did this, what you may have noticed is that your rib cage wanted to tilt up towards the sky. So Ellie's doing a good job of demonstrating this now, and really arch into your lower back. So if that's you, what I'd like you to do is engage this upper abdominal area to draw the front of your rib cage in like this. What other people might have noticed, and Ellie's doing a really good job of this now, is that as you've done this, so perhaps as you drew the rib cage down, but perhaps even just as you took the hands behind your head, that you wanted to really peck your head forwards like this. So if your head has protruded quite far in front of your body, what I want you to do now is kind of draw it in, creating a bit more length up the back of your neck and trying to have that head stacked over your shoulders. So it might be becoming quite hard work. You might feel a lot of muscles waking up around the shoulder blades, around the mid-back. Perhaps you feel quite a stretch across the top of the shoulders. But I want you to make sure that you breathe in this position as well. So even though we're holding something that might be an intense stretch for you, we want to try and relax into the breath, because the more we can breathe in a relaxed way, the more we teach our body it's safe to be in this position, and the more it's going to relax into this. So again, much like Ellie said in the last one, it might be intense. You might feel a lot of hard work going on here, but provided it's not aggravating any normal symptoms of pain. So if you have shoulder pain, this might not be the right one for you. If it's intense but not aggravating normal symptoms of pain, then stay with it. That's a really good thing. So you might get some wobbling, you might even get some cramping in muscles. Again, if that's not normally where you experience symptoms, that is a good thing. As we go through these, you're going to notice things change elsewhere in your body. Like we said at the outset, your whole body is interconnected. So as we change your shoulders and thoracic spine or upper back, it might have knock-on effects elsewhere. So you might notice that this starts to change what symptoms you experience in your lower back, or perhaps symptoms you experience in your hip, your knee, wherever it might be. Everyone is going to be slightly different. But if a symptom that you noticed at the beginning is starting to reduce by being in this position, it's showing you by working on shoulder function, by working on thoracic extension, which is the opposite to where a lot of people are, because a lot of people are rounded in that upper back because we spend a lot of time seated. A lot of people are rounded in their shoulders. By working on those ranges of motion, it is helping to improve that symptom. So like Ellie said in the last one, write in your workbook, if this is happening for you, by working on shoulder function and thoracic extension, it improves my X symptom. I know it sounds simple, but a lot of time this is things that people forget. So they start to have a flare up of their lower back and they try to stretch off their lower back, instead of returning back to what they learned in their function test. To relieve my lower back symptom, I must work my shoulders or work on my thoracic extension. It really is that simple. Another thing that you might notice with this one is that weight distribution change in your feet. So I know a lot of the time when we've run through this with Ellie before, she's someone who feels more weight towards her toes normally. And by doing this exercise, it draws that weight back more towards the heels and into the center of the feet. So that might be you as well. You might start to notice the weight distribution in your feet change the longer you're in this position. I'm going to give you about 20 more seconds here because we're going to spend about 5 minutes in each one, and we're already up to 4 minutes 40. But with any of the exercises, if you do need to take a break, don't feel like you need to keep pushing on. Just because we're putting them in there for 5 minutes doesn't mean you have to do it in the full 5-minute block. If you want to do 2 minutes, rest for a minute, and then another 2, absolutely do that. You are the expert of your body. Okay. You can come out of that now.
That's definitely the one that I need to remember every time, because every time it burns a lot and my mid-back tension, which is my symptom, changes. So I need to remember that. Always more shoulder work for me. So what we're going to do next is move on to what I call the kind of dominant leg test, but it's the opposite of that. We're testing your less dominant leg. So when we did our standing assessment earlier, you may have noticed that you have more weight on one foot than the other. It might have been quite pronounced. It might have been very, very obvious, or it could have been quite subtle. And if you didn't notice a difference, that's also fine. It could be that it's very subtle, or it could be that you're maybe just not that embodied yet. So in my experience, it's extremely rare when you start doing posture that someone is perfectly balanced from side to side. So the more embodied you become, the more you are able to sense into what can be very, very subtle differences. What I will say is a useful tip to use to understand your dominant leg is your dominant leg is probably the one that is more symptomatic. So I do appreciate that sometimes people have pain the same through both legs, and maybe that's you guys, but lots of people have only got pain in one leg, and the current system will focus obsessively on that painful leg. Maybe they have a knee replacement, maybe they have a hip replacement, maybe they have laser therapy on the muscles around that painful knee, or whatever it is. if someone tells me that their right leg hurts, my first question is, what's happening on their left leg? What is their left leg not doing? Why is that right leg overworking? The right leg's not the problem, it's the victim of the overload. It's a victim of circumstance. So what we're going to do here is take our weight to our less dominant leg. So Ben, would you say that you typically have more?
My right leg's my dominant.
Yeah, so Ben knows his right. You mean you'd like to think he is because he's a posture therapist, he knows what he's doing. So Ben knows that his right leg is his more dominant leg. So what he has done is simply shifted slightly sideways so that he is loading his left leg. And what I also want you to do at the same time is think about straightening your foot up a little bit as well. So like we said at the beginning, most people have these turned out feet. And what that does is it keeps your hip twisted in the socket. I want you to keep your foot, well, both feet. I want you to keep both of your feet more parallel, but especially the one that you're putting more load through now, because it will help the muscles through your lower leg wake up more. So all you're doing, slightly shifting, not excessively, to that less dominant side, be it something that you sensed or be it something that you maybe are guessing through going to your less symptomatic side. And if you truly don't have a clue, try both sides, because your less dominant leg is going to be the one that fires up more quickly. So it can happen really quite soon. You know, I was working with someone today who I got her doing this, and quite literally immediately upon putting a bit more weight through her right leg, which her body was avoiding, everything fired up. She felt her hamstring, she felt her glutes, she felt her pelvis pull down. It can be very quick, but it can be more subtle than that. So what we're looking for here is, firstly, when we do this, this was kind of obvious in my mind in a way that you guys would be like, yeah, Ellie, but this is obvious because I'm taking the weight off it. But this is a microcosm of what's happening all the time. When you take your weight off your symptomatic leg, the symptoms reduce. It's that simple. Most of the time, if someone's got left knee pain and they go to their right-hand side, the left knee pain reduces. So what we need to do is encourage that person to walk more on their right-hand side, or vice versa, whatever it might be. So I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but here we go. So what we're looking for is, the longer that we stand here, is which part of our leg is waking up the most as we do this. So for some people, it might be their bottom muscles, it might be their glutes. For other people, it might be their hamstrings. For others, it might be their quads, their front thighs. For others, it might be their lateral hips. For you, it might be the arch of your foot. Whatever it is that you're feeling talking to you right now is probably the first part of that less dominant leg that you need to work on. And so say if you feel your calf screaming at you right now on your left-hand side, if you're doing the same as Ben, if you can feel that calf screaming at you, then it's the left calf that you need to work on more to help your body pull back over to that less dominant leg to take the load out of the other side. So Ben, what are you feeling whilst you're here?
It's all outer hip, sort of glute med.
Cool. And did you have any symptoms at the beginning today?
Not particularly. I had slight right ankle tension, I would say.
Okay. So what it will be interesting for me to check for Ben is keeping him here. And sorry to say, guys, you've got another like 2 minutes to make it to 5 minutes, and your legs might be really tired. So give them a break if you need to kind of shift back. But if this is helping, remember that. But for me with Ben, once we finish this, what I'll be interested in is, after this side of his left hip is really burning like it is now in this new way, he's waking up dysfunction in his lateral left hip. As that dysfunction wakes up, the question will be, does it shift his right ankle tension when he comes back to that normal position? So just for the final minute whilst you're standing here, and it'll be interesting to see how you feel afterwards, if this is making you feel better in your symptoms, wherever they may be, maybe it's a headache, maybe it's elbow pain, maybe it's a wrist pain, it could be anywhere in your body, but everything is connected. You've got to remember that the root cause of that problem that is going down for you right now is caused by a lack of load through one of your legs. And so for you, the kind of path forwards would maybe be doing more work on that less dominant leg. We'll stop things there because I want to give you a moment to kind of return back to normal. So this is you being a little bit more able to perhaps assess what's happened. So Ben, the question for me is, and don't lie for the purpose, not that Ben's a liar, but don't say it for the webinar, but did that left hip burn change your right ankle?
Yeah, it probably did. It's definitely a little bit less than, I'm still aware of it, but it's definitely less than it was.
Okay. So when Ben...
Interesting to do, yeah, because I could feel it more in the pigeon toe probably, and it's...
in what, your left foot you felt burning more?
Yeah, my left foot was burning a lot in the pigeon toe.
Cool. So it sounds like for Ben that he feels like he got more of an impact from the internal pigeon toe position feet at the beginning, but it still sounds like there's going to be benefit for you to like work that outer left hip. Yeah, cool. Next one. Actually, let's have a little swig of water as well.
So next up, we are going to be looking at a function test for our glutes. So in other words, our big bum muscles. So actually, Ellie, I might get you to stand side on for this one.
You can see my lack of glutes.
So for this, what I want you to do to begin with, in fact, sorry, I'll get you to stand front on the go to begin with. I want you just to think about that foot position. So much like Ellie said in the last exercise, I don't want your feet turned out to the side like this. I want you to think about the outside edges of your feet being parallel and then being at about hip width distance. So bit narrower than most people think. Your hips are not as wide as your shoulders. They're not as wide as your shoulders plus another half. It's about a fist to 2 fists in between your ankles is what we want. And I want you to start in that position. You can go back to side on there for me. Okay. So what we're going to do in this exercise is I'm going to get you to squeeze your bum, contracting the muscles, contracting the glute muscles, hold for a second, and then release. Squeeze, hold, and release. And I want you just to notice how hard is it for you to squeeze those muscles. So for some people, they're going to find that they can barely contract those muscles at all. If that's you, that is a good sign that you have dysfunctional glutes. I want you to try and tune into as well whether that squeeze feels like it's coming from those big meaty muscles at the surface of your bum, or does it feel like you are trying to squeeze muscles deeper in? So perhaps you feel like you're trying to squeeze your pelvic floor, or for want of a better term, your bum hole. I want you to try and squeeze the muscles as close to the surface as possible. And it can sometimes be helpful to bring your hands onto your glutes because then you can really feel whether they're contracting or not. And I want you to try and relax everything else as you do this. So, like I said, not squeezing the pelvic floor, not squeezing other muscles. You might notice that if you're dysfunctional in your glutes, that you're trying to squeeze your quad muscles, so your thigh muscles, or perhaps you're trying to grip your belly. I really want you to try and isolate this squeeze to just the glutes, so just those big muscles at the surface of your bum. Now I want you to feel into how well does each side function? So does it feel like you can squeeze both sides at the same time? For a lot of people, what they're going to find is that they have one dominant side. So it's going to be almost a little bit like a heartbeat. It's going to be like a ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom as they squeeze. And I want you to see if you can sync up that squeeze so that both sides squeeze equally and at the same time. You might also notice that the equal element is quite difficult. So you might be able to coordinate them, but can you squeeze them to the same intensity as one another? Or does one side fire better than the other side does? So just take a second, firstly, to notice how those glutes function. Then I want you to go through that same exercise we've been doing each time. So go back to your symptomatic areas. What's changed as a result of squeezing your glutes? So perhaps if you are somebody who experiences knee pain, you found that by squeezing your glutes, it has changed your symptoms that you're experiencing there. When we wake up our glutes, it helps to realign our femurs, so our thigh bones in the hip sockets, which can have a real impact on the load through our knees. So if our Femurs are very internal, so rotated in towards the midline. This can put unnecessary pressure on our knees. And by changing how our glutes function, this changes how the thigh bones align, which changes the pressure through our knees. So you may notice that symptoms you experience in your knees, or perhaps even lower down the chain, begins to change. Also, if you are somebody who has a very strong anterior pelvic tilt, which means a pelvis that tilts forward, it's highly likely that you have a very strong back arch as well. So by waking up the glutes, it can, there we go, Ellie's doing a great job of demonstrating that. By waking up the glutes, it helps to start tucking that pelvis back underneath, which flattens out the lower back and begins to lengthen it. So it begins to relieve pressure that we might feel there. So you might notice, if you are someone with lower back pain, that by squeezing your glutes like this, it can really start to change that symptom as well. And like we keep going on about, it really can be anywhere in your body. So dysfunction in one place of your body can have a ricochet through to anywhere else. So as far apart as the big toe impacting the jaw and things like that. But by squeezing your glutes, you might notice a change in your shoulders, you might notice a change in your upper back. But those ones are kind of the most common and the easiest to understand areas, is the changes to the lower back and the changes to the knees. But don't be surprised if it's elsewhere as well. So just take a second to note down your, or to just mentally log, and then we can maybe note them down in a second, what's changed as a result of squeezing your glutes. And also just take a second to see now, after having done this for nearly 4.5 minutes, has it changed? Do you feel like you're able to isolate more to the glutes than you could at the start? Do you feel like you're able to coordinate that movement? Do you maybe feel like you could actually squeeze a little bit harder than you could at the beginning? Just note what's changed over the course. Like mentally note, it doesn't necessarily have to go in your workbook, but you might just see that even in as short as 5 minutes, things can begin to change in terms of how the muscles of our body function. Okay, you can relax off from that one now.
Next up, you're going to have to
sit in the chair.
Sit in the torture chair.
The hot seat.
Yeah. I just bring the screen down slightly here. So in this exercise, we're basically testing the opposite of what we've just tested. So your glutes are, amongst other things, but primarily they are your hip extensors, which basically mean that the glutes are responsible for firing and pulling your leg behind you like this. What we're testing for in this exercise in the chair is your hip flexors, which are there. And it's a funny one because people think that because they feel tense in their hip flexors, they think they are very strong in their hip flexors. So there's often a thing where people don't want to work their hip flexors more because they think it's going to lead them to more tension there. And whilst that can happen, for most people, they're actually chronically weak in their hip flexors. Muscles that are kept in a constant state of tension, they're not strong, they're not functional, they are just tense. So they still need to be worked to restore balance to the body. So that's basically what we're going to test here. We are looking for you guys to get a horrific burn at the front of your hip there. So where your femur meets your pelvis, that's what we're looking for in this exercise. So you're going to sit on your chair and you're going to put your toes, your ankles, your knees and your hips in alignment. So main thing to watch out for here is that the toes are not wider than the hips, and that the knees are not falling in or falling out. So those knees are going to want to cheat because it makes this exercise easier. And we are making sure that we don't cheat, because when we cheat, we don't fire the dysfunctional muscles. We only reinforce the compensation that's happening in our body. So Ben, if you could sit side on for me, please. And then what we're also going to do whilst we're here is we're going to roll our pelvis forwards. So rolling your pelvis forwards means that you're going to close up the front of your hip. And I like to say it's Pac-Man's mouth. So as the pelvis moves closer to the hip, it's like Pac-Man's mouth opening and closing. You want to keep Pac-Man's mouth closed. You don't want it to open. But as you get tired, Pac-Man's mouth is going to want to open and you're going to want to slump backwards, and that's your hips kind of switching off, but still staying tense and tight. We want your hips to wake up. And just notice once again that rolling the pelvis forwards is not the same as lifting your rib cage upwards. Okay, so some of you who don't have that pelvic hip strength, you're going to thrust your rib cage to compensate. It's going to put too much load in your mid to lower back. So make sure the rib cage is drawn down, but the pelvis rolls forwards. The next thing that we're going to do, and Ben, if we do this on your left foot, you're going to raise the heel of one of your feet. So it's like Ben's got a high heeled shoe on here. His ball of his foot's on the floor, the toes stay grounded, but the ankle lifts up, and you're going to hold that. And that might be enough for some of you to get cramp in your calves or in the arches of your feet. If so, great. They are waking up. That's exactly what we want. Shake it off. Do what you need to do. But come back to this exercise and know that it's one that your body needs more of. So you're keeping that. Anthony's written, whoa, that's intense. Good, Anthony. It means you need it. Karen's saying, well, thank you for being here, Karen. You'll get the link later. Yeah, so we're going to put our high-heeled shoe on one foot. And if this is intense, Anthony, or anybody else, then it means that you need to work your foot in plantar flexion more. So this is good. Make sure that that knee doesn't fall in or fall out to avoid that intensity. Find the intensity and keep it there as much as you can, but make sure you're breathing and give yourself a rest. So unfortunately, on top of that, we're not just testing that foot, we're also going to test our hip flexors. So with the other leg, you're going to lift your knee up and down. So it's very subtle. And actually, maybe Ben, if you, swap sides now that you put your high heeled shoe on, that's it, nice. And I'm going to set my timer. Off we go.
Skipping up for 5 minutes.
Not 5 minutes. We'll do 2.5 minutes, but you will get tired if you're feeling it in the right place. So what Ben is doing here, although he's actually compensating a little bit.
Yeah, I'm bad at this one.
Yeah, so you guys might not see that, but Ben is kicking his ankle forwards rather than lifting his knee up. So you're imagining, I like to say, imagine you're fishing a fish out of water. The fish is moving, the knee is being pulled by the fishing line, your ankle's not being pulled by the fishing line. So Ben was trying to compensate with his right ankle because his right hip is not behaving properly. Huh?
Left.
Oh, left, sorry, mirrored on my computer, left. So what we're trying to do at the same time is roll that pelvis forward so that we feel that Pac-Man's mouth is closed, and that's going to make you feel the front of your hips more. You're still keeping that other foot high for a little bit of extra spice at that foot, but it also helps to stabilize your pelvis and do something a little bit different at your pelvis. And what we're looking for here on this moving leg is that the longer that you do it for, this section here, that kind of groin where the femur meets the pelvis, gets more and more and more heightened, more burning. That is your hip flexor working. Some of you are going to feel this a lot in your quad, your thigh muscle, and that's because your quads have perhaps learned to compensate on behalf of your deeper hip flexors, your iliopsoas muscles, which is what we're trying to fire now. So if you feel your quad, you're kind of in the right region, but the wrong muscle is doing it. We want it to be that you carry on, and eventually it's going to start creeping in to that kind of groin, femur area. My only tips are keep rolling that pelvis forwards and just make sure that you don't kick the knee. And Ben is totally dying a death here. Should we stop?
Don't tilt over to the opposite side.
Oh yeah, good. Well done, Ben. Don't offset. So some of you are going to try and swing your upper body or your pelvis to the side, and that's you compensating using momentum in your upper body rather than using the power of the hip flexor. Okay, unfortunately, we've got to swap sides now. So put that high-heeled, probably fortunately. Put that high-heeled shoe on the other foot. Remember, we don't want the knee falling in, falling out. Pac-Man's mouth is closed. Off we go, 2.5 minutes here. So we're not kicking that foot forwards, we're lifting the knee up. It's not going to travel very far. This isn't about how high that knee goes. It's what's making it lift. And we want it to be this deep hip flexor muscle. And if I had to choose a favorite postural muscle, it would be the psoas, because it's the deepest muscle that we have in our body. It's the muscle that holds us in the fetal position when we're in the womb. So it's like one of the earliest muscles that we have. And it's just super, super important. Most of the work that we do with posture, either directly or, everything indirectly works everything, but a lot of the posture exercises are focusing on releasing our psoas, toning our psoas, restoring balance to the psoas, because it's the thing in the middle of your body that holds you together. It's like really important for your center of gravity. That's my way of trying to distract you from this. So whilst you do this, what you also might want to notice is differences from side to side. So you might find that one hip just burns so much more than the other side. And provided you're not compensating and kind of cheating, like kicking your foot forwards or swinging that pelvis backwards, the side that you feel more is probably your weaker sides. The side that you feel like it's harder on is your weaker side, but just make sure that you're not accidentally cheating, because when you cheat, you won't feel the right muscle and you might think that you're strong in it. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm afraid to say you've still got about another 45 seconds left to go. But the good news is this is very much an exercise that you could do like at your desk. So we definitely want to be working hard to kind of get ourselves out of a seated position as much as we can, because most of us have been sat down so much. But it's still useful to train this because this is a range of motion that our body needs. We don't need to be sat still on a chair all the time, but we do need functional hip flexion, which is what we're doing here. You've got about 15 seconds left then. How's this feeling? Which side is weaker for you?
Oh, my left is definitely weaker.
Yeah, you definitely wanted to compensate with that foot straight away.
I've felt like it was more my quad working on my left side, though. It only travelled up to the hip flexors right at the end, whereas I could feel it in my right hip flexor straight away.
Well done. Okay, good job, everybody. We've got one more function test. We're going to do our standing assessment again, have a little bit of a roundup, and then we'll take any questions that you might have as well.
Ooh, my hips feel worked.
It's funny, actually. I feel like we've done the ones that
the wrong way around, like the ones we're both weaker at.
Yeah, right, the right way around.
Yeah, well, exactly, but for the purpose of a good demonstration, maybe the wrong way around. So our final function test that we're going to do is going to be our hand function test. So a lot of the time, people are very tense in their hands. We spend a lot of time on our phones, writing, holding steering wheels, at the computer. So we have these kind of claw-like shaped hands. So we're going to work on stretching those hands out. And this can be quite intense. I probably recommend let's all start with our non-dominant hand, just because, you can start with either. You can be that way around. Let's all start with our non-dominant hand, because usually our dominant hand is the more tight, more tense one. So it's maybe going to allow you just to sort of listen into the cues a little bit more without it being quite so intense. However, saying that, if you're a gardener, a guitarist, somebody who works with their hands, you might find that you are equally tense in both, or perhaps you're more tense and you're non-dominant. But I would say 90% of people struggle with this more on their dominant hands. So what I'm going to get you to do, stand at about an arm's distance away from the wall for me. Again, think about the alignment of your feet. And then I want you to take your hand and spread it as wide as you possibly can. So you're thinking about this massive separation between the fingers. The thumb is fully extended. You're thinking about broadening the palm as much as possible. And you're going to place that hand onto the wall at shoulder height. If this is intense on your wrist, then you can take it a bit higher than shoulder height. But if you can, I want you to have it at shoulder height with an ever so slight bend into your elbow. So we don't want to be locking that elbow out. I want you just to have a slight bend into your elbow. And I'll start the timer now, and I'm going to talk you through some more of the cues. So one of the things I really want you to think about is ensuring the heel of your hand is grounded into the wall and the little bit in between your thumb and index finger. So we're trying to make as much contact with the wall as possible. And I want you to think about your middle finger being the one pointing up towards the ceiling. So let's just check that our hand's not rotated at all. And once again, just check in that those fingers are spread as wide apart from each other as possible. This might already feel like a really big stretch, but I want you just to take note of a few little things. Firstly, is your rib cage facing forward? Oh, you're tilted. Or have you started to rotate away to avoid the stretch in that hand? So what I want you to do is just make sure that chest is facing forward. Think about both shoulders facing forward. If there was a headlight on each one, they are facing towards the front of the room. And the same thing goes for your pelvis as well. So just make sure that pelvis hasn't started to rotate. The next thing I want you just to double check is you haven't started to lean away from the wall. So a lot of the time when people find this hard, they're going to start to lean into the outside edge of their foot that's furthest away from the wall. So I want you to roll that foot so you're pinning into the big toe, and think about your pelvis staying directly above your ankles. The other thing you might notice here is that your shoulder has started to end up right around your ear. So I want you just to pull that shoulder down and make sure it's level with the other one. We don't necessarily need loads of work going on here today. If we got into this as a proper exercise, we might level it up and give you a bit more. But I just want you to make sure that that shoulder doesn't creep right up around your ear. And just keep that softness into the elbow, keep breathing, keep trying to make as much contact with the wall with as much of your hand as possible, and tune into what's changing. So you might feel a really intense stretch down your forearm. Remember, intense stretching is good, as long as it's not aggravating any of the symptoms that you wrote down at the beginning. So if you had wrist pain at the beginning, this maybe just isn't the right one for you. That stretch might continue into your bicep, perhaps onto the underside of your arm, into your shoulder, maybe across your chest, your upper back. You might start to feel freer around your neck. You might start to feel freer around other places as well.
My hand circulation is coming back.
If you are somebody who has poor circulation to your hands, this one can have a really big impact. So a lot of the time, if we're locked up around our shoulders, and especially if it's as a result of our hands, it's not uncommon for our opposite hand to suddenly become very flushed with blood. You might look at it and it's really veiny. Maybe it's like red, purple. This is tension in your one hand, keeping your shoulders locked, preventing blood flow getting through down your arms and into your hands. So it's not uncommon for people to have a really intense reaction in the opposite hand to the one that they're stretching. Okay, we'll release off there because that's 3 minutes on that side. We're now going to flip around and do the same thing on the opposite side. So just set yourself up at that same distance again, just making sure you're not leaning into or leaning away from the wall. I'll start the timer now. Hands spread really nice and wide. So again, think about that separation between the fingers. Just notice, is it easier or harder to get that separation? Perhaps you notice as well that actually you can't separate two of your fingers quite as much as the others, which is just something interesting to take note of. We're trying to keep that thumb extended, so don't let that thumb curl in at all. And really press and broaden the palm into the wall. Keep a bit of softness into your elbow. Make sure both shoulders are facing forward, so you've not started to rotate your rib cage at all. Keep that shoulder drawn down. It looks like you need to draw that shoulder down a slight bit. There we go. So just make sure, make sure that shoulder's balanced with the other one. And what we want to do is the same as what we've done in a lot of our other exercises. Just make sure we've not started to tilt that rib cage up towards the ceiling as well. So if you've noticed you've really started to arch into your lower back, perhaps you feel a little bit of aggravation of tension in your lower back, then just check that that rib cage hasn't tilted up to the sky, and just use that upper abdominal area just to draw those front ribs in. Checking that you're not leaning into the outside edge of your foot again. So remember, sometimes when we've got a lot of tension, we might start to try and move away from it and tilt into that opposite foot. So just make sure that we've got equal weighting into both feet and both of our hips are still facing forward. Also, just check in and see, does it feel more intense on this side? Like I said, we started on the side that's hopefully going to have felt less intense. So you might find that this side feels really different to the other. And that's teaching you that there's more tension in this hand, although that's not always the case. So you might have noticed it with the other one. You might notice that it was equal, but also just take a scan through your body of the areas where your symptoms were at the beginning. So like we said before, this could be an intense stretch into your forearm, into your upper arm, across the chest, across the shoulders, and then it could start to relieve symptoms elsewhere. So if the shoulders are locked out of position because of tension in the hand, it can cause ripples through the rest of the body. So you might notice just by standing here that your hip feels more relaxed, perhaps your knee feels more relaxed. Again, look at that other hand. Has it become flushed and red or even purpley? Maybe it looks a little bit veinier than normal. These are all good signs that there's positive change going on and you're increasing the blood flow that's getting through to probably both hands, but even the one that isn't working. So we'll do about 10 more seconds here for balance. Oh, you're trying to get out of it.
I want to do my right one again because it was so much tighter.
Oh. Yeah, final 10 seconds, and then that is going to be the end of our function test. I'll hand back over to Ellie to do the standing assessment. So relax that arm off now. I'll hand back over to Ellie to do the standing assessment, wrap up a little bit, and then we will have some questions after that.
Fly just attacked me. Yeah, brilliant. Well then, guys, hopefully your hands are burning, maybe more than you think that they should be. So what we're going to do now is just go back through the standing assessment that we did at the beginning. So please do bear in mind that you've stacked a number of different variables, one on top of the other there. Typically, when we do function tests, we would spend more time in between them dissecting the results. But we didn't know if people were kind of making notes and things like that. So if you do this back again, I thoroughly recommend stopping after each exercise and really making a solid note of when I did this, XYZ happened, because it will just allow you to have that granular detail of where you should head in your body. But we are going to do a standing assessment now, and do bear in mind it might be a little bit murky to know what's caused what. But what we're going to do once again is close our eyes, relax our hands. We're not standing with what you think is good posture, because that's you holding tension in your body, and nothing good comes from holding tension. So we want to just breathe out, allow the body to be wherever it wants to be naturally. And you're going to tune into the same things that you tuned into at the beginning. So hopefully you have an idea of what you felt at the beginning, be it lower back tension or knee pain or neck pain or whatever it was. Has that changed? Some of your symptoms might have got a bit worse, which is possible because we've gone in too much at the at the compensation. You know, we might have aggravated something by poking the bear, but you might notice that other things feel somewhat better, or at least different, because of what we've done. And this is hopefully for all of you, you've got a glimmer of it, even if it's not like a huge amount of difference. And bearing in mind that we've only tested here like 6 ranges of movement, and there are so many ranges of movement that we could be testing, but we've picked our kind of favorites. This is a glimmer of the power of posture. When you zoom out from what hurts and honing in on that area that hurts, and when you look at what changes that pain, that's where your answer is. That's where your future is. That's where your healing comes from. So you might have learned today that your hand tension, your hand dysfunction is causing your hip pain or your knee pain or whatever it might be. So work your hands more. Apply this to anything. So take stock of your body now, sense how it feels. Like, I know obviously, Ben, we've been chopping and changing a bit, but do you feel any differences for having done what we've done?
I didn't do a standing assessment at the beginning, but I do feel free, because I taught my class yesterday, and I know I said that I'd had some left shoulder tension, and that's not present anymore. So
fair enough. Well, I certainly at the end of the hand one, my 2 symptoms are I've got some tension in the right hand side of my rib cage here, and I get really, really numb, cold hands when I've been at my desk a lot, and doing that hand exercise just immediately restores the blood back to my hands. So it means that's what's keeping my hands cold. I've got to stretch my hands out more and probably get off my phone a bit more. So in your workbooks, I won't give us like too much time here to do this, just because I'm not sure if the guys on the call are using them or not, but you'll see at the back, we've included a template, which it might seem a bit kind of color by numbers and a bit basic, but like Ben said earlier on, people forget the wisdom that they've picked up in calls like this. So you can literally say to somebody, your neck pain is caused by your right foot pain. But because they're so disparate and it's so different to what people have been focusing on most of the time for such a long time, they forget that connection. And then 2 weeks later, they're back in the quagmire trying to stretch out their neck, and they've forgotten all about that relationship with their right foot. So we've created this template where we literally want you to fill out, like a child with a workbook, fill out the sentences and fill in the blanks of those words, and they'll hopefully start to make a bit more sense. So it might not make anatomical sense to you what has happened today, but the main takeaway to understand is that everything is connected. The butterfly effect massively kind of applies in your body, and a problem in one area and a movement problem in one area can ricochet to a pain problem in another. And when you can make those connections and actually focus on the movement problem, not the pain, that's where you're going to start making that progress really, really, really quite quickly. So we'll just like have a minute. We're going to move into Q&A. We're aware that maybe some people don't want to stay for Q&A, and that's fine. And obviously there aren't too many of you on the call, so maybe you're not feeling too brave, but it doesn't matter. We'd love to help you if you do want to ask any questions. But if you don't, of course, feel free to go. In the follow-up email that we send later on this evening, hopefully once the recording is like processed and everything like that, we'll mention, what we suggest next. So like we said at the start, we run the Posture Squad together, which is our online membership platform. We do, live classes, programs, we do Q&As like we're about to do now to help you troubleshoot, posture assessments. There's all sorts of stuff within that membership. And we offer a 1-month free trial to try before you buy, and you can cancel your free trial even before that first payment is taken. On top of that, we are also really happy to announce that we're running effectively like a 6-month course next year called the Posture Protocol, and members of the Posture Squad will get this for free, but you don't have to be a member to do the course. So we are going to put a bit of information about that in the email later on as well, but that would be great next steps. But in the interim, have a look at my YouTube, Posture Ellie. I'm sure lots of you watching this, that maybe is where you found me from anyway. Loads of stuff on there that you can kind of dig into and explore and try. I've got a podcast called Postulating with Posture Ellie, which if you listen to it from the beginning, it will just nice and slowly cover you through all of these various principles that we've been like for a long time. It walks you through it episode by episode, so it's a bit easier to digest. So yeah, I reckon we have got time for lots of questions if you have them. So there's no obligation to ask anything. We don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if you want to ask a question, either about